The following is an Operation Podcast production.
It's a really exciting time to be living and experiencing psychedelics, which have been part of my life for 20 years, to come into the consciousness at this level. And there will be so many conversations about it and regulations being passed to provide more safe access to individuals. Now, specifically in California and places that have always been hubs of psychedelics, to me, it's a wild west right now.
Mindbend. Non-ordinary and extraordinary states of consciousness. For Mindbend Creative.
Anahita Anais, thank you for joining me on the Mindbend podcast. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So we connected shortly after I moved to Los Angeles and worked on some projects together. At the time, you were doing a microdosing course, and that's really kind of where I learned a lot about protocols. Your protocol in particular, I learned quite a bit about. And since then, I've continued to see different protocols offered by different people and learn the similarities and the differences. But I was working with Psychedelic Spotlight and just kind of dipping my foot into the greater psychedelic community in Los Angeles, which is multifaceted, lots of interesting characters. So really happy to reconnect with you here again today and learn about your work contemporarily, and where that's taken you and how it's changed and grown and what you've got to share with our audience, what people can take away, and let's learn a little bit together today.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for having me. It's so good to reconnect with you and be here together.
Thank you. So the central nervous system, that's something that you're interested in.
Yes.
Is everyone's central nervous system the same?
Well, from a physiological standpoint, we have the same structure, but how it expresses itself, there's a unique signature to every nervous system. And so for us, on an individual level, we want to gain an understanding of what is my unique nervous system structure and signature, and what nurtures me and what supports me or what gets me dysregulated. And for each person is different.
So you are working in a one-on-one basis with individuals now, or do you do coursework, classes? Is it in person, remote? What does your learning and teaching schedule look like?
So I have a concierge practice in nervous system health and psychedelics. I incorporate psychedelics where it's appropriate, where it will really accelerate the outcomes or help a client move over a block that they might be experiencing. So it's very methodical and intentional, the use of psychedelics. I do one-off psychedelic journeys as well for variety of clients that are not necessarily coming for nervous system regulation and health. And the work is predominantly private, but I also, from time to time, offer courses for singles and couples that are framed through the understanding of the nervous system. To me, it's the missing piece in conversation about love and intimacy. And so often we make decisions and choices from our heart or from our mind. And rarely do we pause to actually consider the needs of the nervous system, which is far more foundational than our cognitive mind needs or our heart's needs. So part of this work is bringing all of these into coherence, into harmony with each other. And it's something that is rarely talked about, is how do we resonate on a deep nervous system level? What relationship serves me to feel safe? Because the moment we're safe and feel that on a visceral level, that the way we show up for love, the way we respond to disconnection or triggers or challenges is vastly different.
So is there a special emphasis in relationships and working with individuals who are experiencing difficulty or challenges in relationships? Has that become a greater part of your practice?
It's something that's transpired over the last couple of years. As I was working with individuals for a long time and COVID happened and people were locked into their homes with their partners. And I kept hearing this from clients time and time again. I wish my partner had the same tools, or I wish my partner was here. So it was very organic. I started inviting them to bring their partners to those sessions. And from there, it just organically became a part of my practice because the outcomes that we're seeing were so wonderful. And then I entered a partnership after 10 years of being single. And I don't like to teach anything that I don't have an embodied experience of. So while theoretically I could see the results in my clients, for me to have that experience in my own day-to-day is what made me inspired to create an offering for couples, but also singles, because the foundation of the health of a relationship is really set in a dating phase, in the initial phases of a relationship. So when we have that awareness, the foundation is solid, then we have less problems down the road to address. So it is a part of my practice. The overall umbrella is always nervous system health. So I would say there's a half and half split. Individuals that are there, people in high stake, high power, high positions, high stress positions that want a little bit extra capacity to hold their vision, to hold their relationships. So often I work with people like CEOs, attorneys, surgeons. I have quite a few in my practice, people that are really high stress practices and careers, to expand the capacity to hold the tension, to hold uncertainty, to hold their vision, to hold their relationship and intimacy. And as our world becomes more and more dysregulated and uncertain, that is an extra important capacity for us to develop. It's a skill set that we can develop so that we don't become dysregulated with uncertainty, with the unknown, with the unresolvable, which there's increasingly more and more of these in our experience.
You've just touched on it, and I was going to ask you to kind of go in this direction, but let's talk about what are challenges to the nervous system. Like, what do you identify as things that come up that are traditional, historical, archetypal challenges to nervous system regulation?
So there's 3 levels from a physiological standpoint. Our nervous systems are always scanning the environment for cues of safety or danger. It's very primal. It's not a very complex system. And there's 3 dimensions: the internal world, so our body, our physical well-being, our thoughts and our emotions, the internal world; the interpersonal world, the relationships, whether it's our partnerships, friendships, family, community, colleagues, and the society as a whole; and then the environment itself. And so what is the environment like? Whether there's noise pollution, or there is no nature around, or traffic. So there's environmental factors, there's environmental toxins that all influence our nervous system. Media consumption, social media, these are becoming more and more prevalent as factors for dysregulation of nervous system. So as we notice more polarizing in the society, as we notice more destruction of the ecology and natural resources, as we notice a breakdown in communication, loneliness epidemic, and you add to that layers of food toxicity and environmental toxins and overall lack of health and well-being that is part of our diet, our lifestyle, our practices, but honestly, above all of it is stress. Stress is the biggest foundation. So we can eat the healthiest food, we can do the exercises, but if we don't have effective ways of regulating our nervous system and navigating stressful periods, then we're hijacked. And the problem is not that we react to conditions. The problem is that we get stuck in that reactive state and can't find our way back. So this work is more about honoring the fact that we are going to get dysregulated. It's a natural part. We don't want to be so detached from reality that we're not, but how do I find my way back? And so part of this work is carving out these pathways that over time become stronger and more effective for us to be able to navigate between a stress response or a collapsed response, depression, anxiety, hopelessness, distraction, back to a state of engagement and social connection and creativity.
So you carve out pathways to central nervous system regulation through somatic practices, dietary alterations, fundamental routine shifts. Like, it's
all
a
of
whole
it.
constellation?
Yes, so it's an integrative practice. I'm trained in mental health and integrative medicine, and variety of somatic trauma therapy modalities, internal family systems, chronic pain management. So there's a multitude of modalities. So when I work with an individual, not necessarily couples, when I work with an individual, I go deep into all the different factors that influence their nervous system, internally, relationally, and in the environment. And so some of it starts with blood tests, biometrics, so wearable technology, analyzing that data. We look at dietary opportunities. Most people that come to me have a clean diet, but there's also a lot of misinformation out in the world that is not really catered to the individual. So this is why my work is private, because each individual requires very, very unique set of practices and dietary needs. So something that might work for one person will not work for the other. And when we look at the data and we understand the symptoms and what they're trying to address, then we're able to optimize it from the ground up. So it's very foundational work. Starts with sleep, then moves into diet, fitnesses, relationships, introspective practices, and creativity.
I purchased an Aura ring recently for the first time. I was excited to have brought that on board, and primarily for help with sleep tracking, because I have heard enough podcasts to where I understand that sleep hygiene and sleep maintenance is critical to giving yourself a good foundation from which to operate. So can we talk about sleep for a little bit?
Yes.
All right. So what I've been looking at on my Aura ring, it gives me some fairly easy to understand, like basic headers of like what we're paying attention to, oxygenation and breath rate, HRV, and latency. You know, these concepts that you can kind of dive into a little bit more. But sleep can be challenging for people, especially if you are in a high stress period of your life, or you're going through some kind of life change, or maybe you've just always had difficulty with sleep. So how do we tackle such a massive undertaking, which can seem intimidating?
Yes, I wish there were easy answers to it, but there are a few things that we can do that can influence our sleep quality. Some of it is what I call sleep hygiene practices. So eating earlier, last meal 3 hours before sleep, turning off media, blue light glasses after sunset, not having intense conversations. For a lot of people, it takes a while for their nervous system to come back down and calm down after even just a social engagement. I personally can't go to an event and come home and fall asleep right away.
Mm-hmm.
I need a little bit of a process to unwind and come down. The temperature, the fabrics that we sleep in, those are all really important. So this is just some of the basics around sleep. But things like alcohol consumption, I mean, it completely changed my world. I was never a big drinker to begin with, but I would have an occasional wine here and there. And once I started tracking my sleep, it was consistent. The data is there. And I know I get this feedback from many clients that they get anxious when they have a wearable technology and it has the adverse effect for them.
Oh, no.
But I really invite everyone to consider it as a compass, not a scorecard. And so really looking at it as, okay, where are the opportunities? What am I learning from the data that I'm receiving? And so if I have a late meal, well, how does that influence my sleep? But for alcohol specifically, every single time my HRV would drop by 50%, every single time. So I already know that it's when our brain is not resting at nighttime and is not focused on detoxing from the daytime cognitive activities, that there's no going back. So we can't really recover from that. So every time that we have a low quality of sleep, it adds up to that load of toxins in the brain. And over time, it can cause a variety of neurological problems, cognitive challenges, and more sleep disruption. So as we get older, there are very specific things that we can do. Specifically, alcohol is one of the things that I'm hyper-focused on with clients, that even if you're going to have some alcohol, have it earlier in the day. And then utilize supplements, B-complex, NAC, alpha lipoic acid, to accelerate the detox process and hydrate and allow your nervous system and your brain to detox before falling asleep. And also there are herbs and supplements that people can utilize for sleep that can be really, really helpful. Things that are, some of them are habit forming, so they have to be contained for a shorter period of time, like valerian root. And some, like magnesium glycinate, are something that I think everyone should be taking before sleep. It really helps the nervous system unwind and allows you to get a better sleep. Now, I want to also name hormonal imbalances. I'm also in perimenopause. I've been hyper-focused in that space for many years. And specifically for women, hormonal imbalances can disrupt sleep at a level that they've never experienced before. So getting ahead of that, doing those testings, and even if you're not in perimenopause, if there are any women listening right now that are not in perimenopause, I strongly suggest that you get a test of a baseline of your hormones. Because when we look at the spectrum of what is considered normal for a woman in the United States, it's benchmarked against the general population. It's not individualized. So if you have that baseline of what your hormones are in your 20s and 30s, then when you start experiencing symptoms in your 40s and 50s, then you know that fluctuation, whether it's normal for you or not. So many people will experience symptoms, go get tested in their 40s and 50s, but they seem normal. But normal based on the standard benchmark for an average American woman does not necessarily apply to everyone. Mm-hmm. And so having this ahead of time, these actions that you take can have a really significant impact later on in quality of care that you receive and how you take good care of yourself for longevity. And quality of sleep is consistently disrupted in perimenopausal women. So that's the other thing I look at. I'm not trained in endocrinology, but I have wonderful partners that I refer women to.
Mm. In your work as an entrepreneur in this space, do clients find you magically, or how do you make that happen? Because I speak with a lot of different entrepreneurs who are coaches or consultants or whatever you want to call it, and the process is different for everybody. So what's that been like for you in establishing this and then applying everything that you've amassed in terms of learning and techniques and tactics and going out and making this work for yourself? What's the process like?
So my practice is very much a referral-based concierge practice. I don't take on many clients at a given time. I attempted, the bigger model, the digital model of working with individuals in group settings, in different contexts, not necessarily the nervous system work as much, but because this work requires time and the work I do is not like therapy, it's not like medicine, it's very eclectic. It has many different dimensions. So I need more time with each individual and I prefer to go deep with them versus wide. So as a result, I don't need that many clients in a given year. And I prefer it that way too. It allows a depth, and every client that comes to me ends up referring people. So the referral system works pretty well for me, but it's not for everyone.
Yeah.
Like that.
When you're working that close with people, what are challenges that come up specific to that deep of an exposure? Like it's something that, you're getting into the nitty gritty of what makes a person, there's psychology involved, there's their physicality, their physiology involved. Are you able to approach everybody? You have to figure out a unique way to tackle everybody because everybody is unique, obviously, but how does that feel? What does that look like for you?
So it's important to know our limits, the limits of our knowledge and where we're capable and where we should refer out. And something that knowledge is very important to be effective with clients. So for me, I have a process that I walk people through in onboarding, and I look at the data, I look at the medical history. I'm not trained in medicine, so I refer out to my trusted network and I collaborate with them. Often individuals will come to me and they are on psychiatric medications and they want to get off of them. So then I have to collaborate with their psychiatrist. Sometimes they're open to it. Sometimes they end up shifting their psychiatrist to do that collaboration to win them off and get them in, if it's safe, and get them into a new holistic protocol. So sometimes challenges are more foundational and medical, in which case I refer out. However, most clients, the number one challenges that clients face is the obstacle is themselves and their willingness. Everybody wants the outcome, and we live in a society where we're so used to quick fixes. And when it comes to nervous system work, there is no quick fix, because most people, by the time they get to me, they've been dysregulated for decades. And so you might have a really healthy diet and fitness protocol. It does not mean that you're not dysregulated. And that dysregulation that's happened over decades, it takes time to unwind. So it's a sense of commitment and checking in every few months, having an assessment. If you need to shift strategy, if we shift our approach, then we do that. But it's very bespoke. Every single individual is different.
Yeah. I didn't know that you were working with individuals coming off of prescription pharmaceuticals.
Yes.
That is an area of deep need, I think, in our world, and there's all different kinds of different medications that people may express an interest in eventually coming off of after short-term and long-term usage. And you work alongside psychiatrists, prescribing physicians who are open to consulting. It means they have to make time to maybe have a call with you and learn from you about what you want to do with whoever it is that you're working with. And sometimes they're open to it and sometimes they're not.
Yes, sometimes they're open to it and sometimes not. Predominantly when people come to me, if they want to get off medication, it's because they want to work with psychedelics. So whether it's microdosing or larger journey experiences, there's plenty counterindications with psychoactive medications.
Yeah.
And so in my experience, more often than not, the protocol that the psychiatrists provide for weaning off of these medications is extremely aggressive. So my approach is rarely a shock to them because I'm not pushing harder. In fact, I'm trying to take a more conservative approach, a longer term approach.
Aggressive, you're meaning shorter term
Right.
duration, yeah.
Yes. And so often it just fires back and doesn't really work because they'll get on a schedule to wean off and it's very aggressive and they are inspired to do it. The client wants to get off, so they'll just want to do the more aggressive approach. But the symptoms they cannot manage. And even if they manage to get off the medication, they often go back on a higher dose.
Oh, really?
And so my work is really about slowing it down and doing it safely and giving it periods of integration. And often psychiatrists will be like, every week, take a quarter off. Doesn't work. We have to stabilize at every dose for a period of time and then reassess. And there is supplemental protocols, there's dietary protocols, there's IVs, there's detoxes that I work with to accelerate the process as much as I can in a safe manner so that the results are sustainable. And I've had clients with 30 years of antidepressant use, other medications that are pretty difficult to get off of, benzodiazepines, other psychiatric medications for bipolar disorder that are not necessarily for bipolar people. I want to be clear that if you're diagnosed with bipolar disorder and you're taking a medication, the safe path is to stay on the medication. But often those medications are prescribed for other conditions.
A medication has been prescribed that's typically prescribed for something, but it's being used for something else, and it might not have been the most skillful application of that tool over time. Yeah.
Yes.
So is it safe to say that the majority of people that come to you who are looking for help with medical titration or cessation are on antidepressants?
Yes.
Okay. So can you, I know it's not really fair to do this, but can you ballpark for us like what a rapid and perhaps unskillful titration method might look like versus what a more metered, thoughtful, slower titration method might look like?
Yes. Although I want to say before any of that anything that I mention here does not necessarily apply to an individual. Every individual needs to be assessed, and no one should stop taking any medications without the supervision of their prescribing doctor. With that said, the safe pathway is for every year that someone has been on a medication, it's a 2-month period of weaning off. That is a safe pathway. Now, there are things we can do to accelerate that through detoxing, IVs, supplemental and nutritional interventions. We can accelerate it a little bit, but not a whole lot. It really depends on the individual and how well they stabilize. However, with psychiatrists, often they'll recommend and in every couple weeks for them to lower a dose.
By how much?
It really depends on the dose. So usually by 25%.
Okay. Every couple weeks.
Every couple weeks.
That's considered a fast,
It's very
aggressive
fast.
titration.
It's very fast.
Yeah. And this is just in our hypothetical scenario here, that's a generic or antidepressant medication.
Yes.
Yeah. And you said a month for every year?
2 months.
2 months for every year. And how much is that titration? How much percentage?
So again, it really depends on the dosage.
Uh-huh.
And usually we'll start it. I always work with the prescribing doctor. So I'll take the recommendation of the prescribing doctor for the first phase and we'll apply it in 2 months.
Okay, got you. And their recommendation might be 10%,
Yes.
25%. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. It's a fascinating space. It's a fascinating problem. I know it's hard to talk about because, I mean, you laid out the caveat beautifully. Thank you. But there's just a dearth of information, and the information that you can find is pretty rote. It's fairly, how nuanced it is. And there's just not a lot of ready support. I've heard different things from different physicians, and it's wildly varying,
Yes.
right? But it's a space that people are really in need of assistance.
Yes. I don't intervene with the dosage at all.
Mm-hmm.
I just take the protocol that's given and extend it and provide the integrative support mechanism, stretch it out so that there is better outcomes, lasting outcomes.
Are you open for new consultation on this particular aspect of your service offering?
Yes.
Yeah.
Although one thing to keep in mind is that, especially with any medication, any psychiatric medication, weaning off process is dysregulating. We're changing the brain chemistry. It's a serious task. And so with that, it's not just here's a protocol and go implement it, but we need structure. And part of the protocol is having a support system. There are people that you onboard as your support system because the day-to-day can be really challenging. And part of it is having those interventions and skill sets of regulating your nervous system, knowing how to do that. What are those practices and integrating them? So it's something that I do tackle in my practice, but not as a way of just handing somebody a protocol. Because for me, what's important is that the lasting results, not just getting somebody off the medication.
Mm-hmm. That's building a new foundation or revising the pre-existing foundation
Yes.
to support where you need to be, where you want to be, what your goals are, which are highly individualistic.
Absolutely.
So you mentioned also a person's interest in alleviating contraindications so that they might be able to utilize psychedelic medicines. Mm-hmm. You live in Los Angeles and you've been around this space for a while. There's a pretty wide ranging landscape of attitudes and behaviors around psychedelic usage specifically. And historically there always has been, right? I think we talk more now than ever about skillful usage or curative containers or intentional experiences, right? And it's always exciting to learn more about how powerful tools and substances are used with greater knowledge, with greater skill, and that you need shepherds for that, you need guides for that, right? People who can really lay it out. So what do you think has changed in the public consciousness in the time that you've been working in the space? Like, how have you seen ideas alter around psychedelics and psychedelic medicine and what we think of when we talk about psychedelics specifically?
I mean, it's a really exciting time to be living and experiencing psychedelics, which have been part of my life for 20 years, to come into the consciousness at this level. And there'd be so many conversations about it and regulations being passed to provide more safe access to individuals. Now, specifically in California and places that have always been hubs of psychedelics, to me, it's a wild west right now because there are many individuals with good intentions, but without the training. And when the facilitation is to experience psychedelics for the first time, for the first couple of years, is not skillful, and not just from a clinical standpoint, but also considering the responsibility of serving the medicine. When that's not there and that knowledge isn't passed on, that serving medicine is a very significant responsibility, that a lot of people will go into this space and have visions and take on the understanding that, oh, well, I like to do this. This is a beautiful work. I like to do it. But there's no effective training for a lot of people that are serving medicines. And so the old way used to be that you will enter a lineage and you would start and study with teachers. It would take you 10, 15 years before the teacher will offer you a blessing to serve medicine. So you come from that old lineage and you carry forward that container of safety and responsibility. But now it's kind of a wild west. You've got Instagram influencers that experience medicine 2 years ago are now serving and promoting it in a mass marketed space. And so there is no safety. And a lot of it is individuals just seeking the next experience. And so we'll see many serve multiple medicines over the course of 1 or 2 days. And some of them are counterindicator.
It happens in spaces where that's occurring.
It's very common. Mm-hmm. It's very common. There's many individuals that I speak to that go into experiences where 3-4 medicines are served together. And so that's a lot of wild cards. Even when we're working with one medicine, we want to take a lot of intention in understanding the individual, their history, their background, their intention, to make sure it's the right match for them, the dosage, the amount. And then when we add so many and when we serve it in a group setting, effectively that process is completely broken down. And so it increases risk for individuals. And I've had clients in the past that were very happy. And I mentioned to them, this is a red flag. I don't recommend it. Oh, we've been doing this for a long time. It's great. Our experiences are great. And one of them ended up in a psychiatric care, had a complete mental breakdown after a few years of doing this work. So there's a sense of responsibility that I think is breaking down as the psychedelics are becoming more and more prevalent, and that we don't have effective training and lineages holding it. And this is where there is no ethical framework for people to follow. And often people will just experience, well, I want to have an experience, and they'll go into a space, but there's no integration. So they'll have this amazing experience, but nothing really changes. So they'll go back and have the experience again. And so it becomes another crutch to lean on, another experience to have. But if you have no framework for integrating that expansion, then change is really difficult over time. It feels a bit extractive to me.
I think that's how we act a lot of the time. We expect that sort of extractive exchange, right, from the things we engage in, the reason why we're compelled to do something or show up for something or eat something, right? So it's not as simple as I ingested this and it works on me whether I put in the work or not. It is affecting my neuroplasticity. It is creating new neural pathways, and I don't really have to worry about doing anything other than having taken it and then gotten home safe.
It's a great point, but I'm going to counter it, because think of it this way. If you want to train to become an excellent basketball player, you warm up your body before, and then you go train. So when you ingest psychedelics, it's effectively warming up your brain. But if you don't integrate, there's no training.
The psychedelic experience is the brain warming?
Yes. It warms up, it creates the possibility for new neural connections. But neural connections don't happen overnight. So you have to put into practice to when you develop that connection to strengthen it, just like a muscle. It's impossible to go into a session and just do one exercise with your muscles and expect that that's going to last. And so when you warm up the brain, what are you going to do with it? As you warm up the brain, you want to have effective systems and guidance and integration to then turn that into lasting change, new neural connections in the brain. But just because you had a new idea and a thought, beautiful connection, beautiful expansion, creative ideas, new way of looking at the world in a journey experience, it doesn't mean that you have that perspective. You can retain it 6 months later if you don't integrate it. So much of this work is the integration. The journey itself is the opportunity. It's the expansion, but how do you integrate that expansion? It doesn't last long term. This is why we need the more skilled facilitation. We need more integration systems, and we need follow through, which often isn't happening.
Mm-hmm. Can we talk a little bit about you personally?
Sure.
Why are you interested in doing this work?
I always say I didn't really choose it. It chose me. I was very much against psychedelics. I was afraid of them. The idea of losing control was just not something I was ever attracted to.
Mm-hmm.
And the medicines really just kept showing up in my field. And I had people continuously offering them to me, not in a ceremonial context. This was like early to mid 2000s. Not much of that existed back then, but even recreationally, I was like, I'm not really into that. And at some point I gave in because people around me were having a whole lot of fun at a small party in the desert and at a house. And I gave in. And at the time I had a substance use addiction that I had been trying to solve for a long time. I would drink. I didn't have a drinking problem, but I would drink to just balance everything out. I had been in outpatient rehab and nothing was working. And I was terrified. Friends around me would tell me that if you keep going like this, you're not going to make it. And so I had no idea. There was no research on addiction and psychedelics at the time. And the first time I worked with psilocybin, I recognized 5-6 hours had passed and I had no desire to use anything. And as I was coming out of it, I didn't have any desire to even drink or anything. And to me, it felt like, I don't know what this is, but it's something that I should look into and maybe experiment with and explore more. And for me, that's what pulled me into the psychedelic world, was the addiction that I had held for years and trying to get away from. And that's how I ended up using psychedelics. And for the first couple of years, it was very recreational. And then medicines showed up in a more intentional way in my field. And the first time I had a intentional psychedelic experience, my whole world shifted. And I dedicated myself to studying and understanding it for personal use and personal spiritual growth and healing, predominantly working with ayahuasca. I spent 10 years studying and with teachers both here and down in Peru. And I was on the founding board of an ayahuasca church starting in 2013. And the lineage was very robust. And so I had wonderful teachers that taught me the reverence with the work, the caution and the responsibility with it, but also the artistry of it. And it was, even though I was offered the permission to serve medicine, it felt too big of a responsibility at the time for me, knowing that the energetics of holding that medicine was something I couldn't do while holding a corporate job in tech. And so as I left tech and focused on healing arts to heal my own body out of disability and chronic pain is what brought me here. Psychedelics were always still spiritual practice, a service through the church, and not something that I integrated into my practice until 2020 in the pandemic is when people started talking more and more about it. We had a massive surge in mental health challenges. A lot of people were talking about microdosing, and I felt a sense of responsibility to put content into the world. So I launched microdoseguru.com, and that's how it all started. It started as an education, and my clients in my practice that started seeing the material I was putting out, they started inquiring about microdosing. So it really started the integration of my practice very methodically and cautiously with small doses and microdosing, predominantly because the trauma work, most of my work around nervous system is getting to the root of trauma where the dysregulation happens. And a lot of psychedelics can be counterindicators for trauma. And so we have to approach it very carefully, very intentionally, slowly, methodically. And over time, I started offering higher doses for specific clients with specific nervous system profiles. And that's where the work just, it has its own intelligence. And it wanted to come into my practice, and it did. And until today, it's a small part of what I do. I still offer quite a bit in my practice, but it is a smaller part of what I do because it's very integrative. And my psychedelics are just one tool, not for everyone, not a crutch, but as if it's going to accelerate the outcome or help people overcome a block or gain a new perspective and hope and vision for their life, then it's a wonderful healing modality.
What is a healing modality that is in your toolkit that we haven't discussed yet today?
I have a new modality that I am just so psyched about right
Let's hear
now.
You heard it here first.
So most of my work is somatic, although I work with neural reprogramming models. Most of my work is somatics. Most of them are online, some in person, but this modality is only in person.
Okay.
And it's called aerial somatic. A dear friend of mine developed this about a decade ago. And the first time I experienced it, I just knew that I have to study this. And so last year, I got trained and certified in this modality. And it's beautiful. It's essentially aerial silk swing that is suspended into the ceiling, and sometimes I combine it with a small dose of ketamine just to unwind, to allow the nervous system to unwind a little bit more. And it is a truly profound experience. Anyone that's ever been in that swing, from outside, they're like, oh, you're stretching your body. It's also very intimate. It's the first time I actually touch my clients.
Oh, wow.
And so the modality itself, imagine if Watsu, the water therapy, and aerial yoga and rolfing had a child, it would be aerial somatic. And so it involves unwinding of the fascia, which fascia is where we hold most tension and stress in our body. It's not actually the muscles, it's the fascia, the connective tissue itself. It's now considered an organ, and it's all over the body. So it's a series of contractions and expansions that unwind the fascia in combination with rocking. So I actually wrap individuals in a cocoon. And so it feels very much like a womb-like environment. And we utilize sound and touch and rocking of the body in a fetal position, all wrapped up. It's beautiful experience. A single session has ripple effects for people. It's an instant reset. It's impossible for anyone to get into that swing and come out and not be feeling completely new and reset. It's amazing.
At what point in someone's work might they be ready to experience the aerial somatic modality?
Aerial somatic is for everyone. It's for everyone. Anyone can experience it. It's the only modality that I offer as an individual session because I really want people to experience it. I don't have a whole lot of slots for it available, but I do offer it every month, a handful of slots for people who are not already in my practice to come and experience it. So it's available for booking.
When do you determine that the ketamine component is advisable for an optimal experience with aerial somatics?
I have a very specific process of onboarding. So it's about making sure that there's no counterindication, that they don't have motion sickness, and that ideally they've had an experience with ketamine before, but the dose is pretty small. So I don't work with a very large dose.
The sublingual dose?
It's yes. So a little. It's not too high of a dose. I actually use sprays.
Okay.
So-
Okay.
And for most individuals, it's a great fit. Just depends on the dosage. But the modality stands on its own.
Mm-hmm.
It can deliver the results perfectly without the added layer of the medicine. The medicine is wonderful if people have aversion to touch. You know, they might get a little uncomfortable, or they have difficulty relaxing, or they're bracing too much, then it will be a great option for them. But it's available if they pass the medical clearance for it, then yes.
Okay, cool. So, and that's something that anybody could contact and say, I'm interested in exploring this specifically, sort of an a la carte
Yes.
modality. Okay, got it.
Yes.
Okay. So we talked a little, you alluded a little bit to chronic pain and
Yes.
chronic pain having been a part of your life at a certain point. Can you
Yes.
get into that a little bit more, and then how the treatment of chronic pain in your eyes has changed over the years, and how you become familiar with working with others who are dealing with chronic pain?
Yes. So I was always healthy, no chronic pain, no pain at all for a long time and my whole life. And I had a traumatic experience during one of my trips to the Amazon. And coming out of it, I had a simple yoga injury that would not go away. And it started to spread in my body. So it started with my knee and then moved into my back and then my arms and elbows. So at some point, every part of my body was in pain. And there were days I couldn't hold a cup. I couldn't function at all. I couldn't sit or stand or go up a flight of stairs for 3 years. And there was no answers. The answers the doctors had was antidepressants. I went through all the diagnostics, and there was nothing that they could specifically diagnose. They called it complex connective tissue disorder, but nobody actually understood what it is. The answer was antidepressants and opiate painkillers. And because at the time I had a deep practice with ayahuasca, there was no way I could take any of these medications, no matter how desperate I was. I wasn't willing to give up the practice and my work with the church and the community. And I just knew that this was just symptom treatment. And I'm too curious for symptom treatment. I like to get to the bottom. And after 3 years, by some grace of spirit, I stumbled across a trauma release therapy. And I went into that therapy session the first time, let's try it out. I've tried everything else. And it's effectively a sequence of movements that gets to your body to tremor involuntarily. And the theory is that it's discharging what your central nervous system and tissue is holding. And in that single session, I noticed a change in the level of pain. And I went down a rabbit hole to study it. I studied John Sarno's work. It's a famous book called Healing Back Pain. And it sent me into the system that he's developed for pain psychology. There's a center in Beverly Hills called the Pain Psychology Center. So I went there and I did 6 weeks of treatment, combination treatment of somatics with the trauma release therapy and the pain psychology. And the combination of the two and a vacation away from my tech job, I had 7 days of no pain for the first time in 3 years. I mean, I didn't know a single day with no pain. And coming back, and this is why it's important to really consider all the dimensions, because although the therapies helped really well, if I hadn't been on a vacation, I don't know that I would have experienced the change.
If you hadn't been
On vacation from work.
Oh.
And so when I went back to work, day one, the pain came back. So that was a very significant marker that the level of stress, even though, and this happens often, many people will come to my practice and I'll ask them how stressed are you? They'll be like, oh, just normal. We've normalized a level of stress that is not normal for our nervous systems. And so for me, having lived, with tension and trauma, I grew up under rocket bombs and I was a refugee. So for me, high tension was a norm. This is how I lived. So my marker, my gauge of what is too much stress was warped. It was just not accurate. But once I went back and I noticed that my pain immediately came back, I knew it, that it has something to do with my work. A week later, I sat in an ayahuasca ceremony, and it doesn't happen often for me to have an auditory experience in a journey, but I had an auditory experience where the medicine effectively told me to just leave my career and dedicate myself to this work.
That hadn't been a precedent set in your experiences of getting any kind of cue or direction or
Never.
ultimatum?
I'd asked quite a bit. I'd never gotten that kind of a very direct directive. And I was terrified. I was like, I worked my whole life to have this career, and I'm so happy. I really enjoy it. I have a team. I'm at the top of my game. It's great. If I give this up, I know nothing else to do with my life. I don't want to be poor. And it was just so terrifying, the prospect of it. Of course, years later, now that I understand trauma and having been a refugee and not having a home and all the dimensions of that, how you develop safety is all these structures that you set around yourself to help you feel safe again. And my work was part of that. It's what facilitated that. But of course, 3 days later, our main investor walked out the door and they laid off everyone. And so I was like, okay, well, Spirit's guiding this one. So we'll see what happens. And that was the process that directed me to the work with chronic pain. And so some of it is I went and got trained as a holistic chronic pain coach. And that process is very specific to rewiring pain in the brain. So effectively, chronic pain is a mechanism where your brain is firing pain signals on its own. It's got caught in a pain loop. So usually when there is pain, the limb, wherever you're experiencing pain, will send a signal to the brain. And then the brain will validate, is this signal valid or not? If it considers it valid, then it will send another signal back to the limb. That's when you experience pain. So 2 signals have to go and come back for you to experience pain. But with chronic pain, the brain gets loops the pain signal. So effectively, there is no pain signal coming from the limb. The brain is just caught sending that one signal back to the limb that says there is pain, even if there is no pain. And so the pain experience is real, but the cause isn't. So what we do in the world of chronic pain work is reprogram the brain away from pain. So there are mindfulness-based practices. There are things from touch, like certain level of touch that can disrupt a signal of pain. There are practices that are effectively utilizing movement or breath of certain kind to disrupt pain signals in the brain. So when we talk about developing new neural connections, pain is one of the most difficult ones to disrupt. And the number one reason is that when you have anything going on in your mind, the moment you have pain that doesn't go away, your entire awareness is focused on that pain. So it's really difficult to draw that awareness elsewhere. It takes time. This is why microdosing and psychedelics are highly effective when it comes to chronic pain.
Introducing those breaks.
Exactly, because it expands opportunity for neuroplasticity and new neural connections in the brain. And then in combination with those strategies, you can accelerate the outcomes. But we pair that's just a cognitive model, but we pair that with the nervous system work, with understanding that the nervous system is holding tension that has not released itself. So when we experience danger or trauma, we have our sympathetic nervous system get activated. Fight, flight, big energy, freeze, fawn, all these big energies. We don't use them. Where does it go? How often our troubles these days in modern time require us to fight or flight? We usually don't. We just think, we get frustrated, we try to numb ourselves. But that energy that's created for fight or flight, where does it go? It gets stored in the tissue. So the somatic work is about accessing those tension points in the tissue and releasing them. So whether that's through trauma release work, or I have a system called Safe and Sound protocol that's highly effective. Then there is the somatic swing, the aerial swing work, aerial somatic work. So there's varieties of things that we can do to discharge that tension. So a chronic pain that approach has to have a combination of the cognitive models, the integrative medicine layers to make sure the brain has all the support it needs to create these new neural connections, paired with the somatic work to discharge the tension from the body.
For someone who isn't in a position to work with someone like you, or whether it's socioeconomic or geographic or just their own fears or inhibitions, like what would be maybe 3 things that you would recommend somatic practice-wise that a person can undertake to do themselves on a consistent basis that would sort of point towards regulating the nervous system and doing things to the body to help release that tension or at least create opportunities to shift your focus?
So first thing that I recommend to everyone is get some morning light. Morning sun is a game changer for our circadian rhythm, for our mental health and well-being, and not with a phone. So if you don't go outside and scroll on your phone, but actually sit and receive the sun. Early morning sun is ideal for the nervous system. Super simple.
Does sun still count if it's overcast outside?
It still counts. Ideally, there'll be better sun and direct sun, but the daylight still counts. It's tremendously healing for the nervous system. First thing in the morning. Not looking at your phone, when you first wake up. That's just a dysregulation that happens the moment I wake up. I pick up my phone, I check my email. Now I'm on the agenda of somebody else and the demands of my life. Just allowing the morning period, the first half an hour to an hour, is very important in setting the nervous system in the right track.
I have to admit, I haven't really held the first half hour of my waking life in that high regard, and from this moment on, I shall endeavor to do so.
Yeah, so no coffee.
Fortunately, I can't drink coffee anyway, so that's
no
not a
coffee
disruptor
for at
me.
least an hour to 2. That's
Okay.
ideal. At least an hour to
Really?
to 2.
No
Yes.
coffee for anyone?
For
an hour
anyone.
to 2 after waking up?
Yes. It's a change I made, and I really noticed a difference. Because early when we wake up, our brain still is processing and trying to wake up. And when we introduce coffee, then the brain is not able to go through its natural process of waking. So it's a chemical waking, and then we crash. And then we feel more tired, and the sleep is more disrupted later in the day. So allowing an hour to 2 is ideal. Now, there's some limitations, physical limitations for some people, but training, exercising is really important and not something too intense. So yoga, Pilates, or even just a walk. So engaging the body and getting it moving consistently is really important. Even if it's 10 minutes a day, to just get moving is really, really important. And there is so many beautiful free resources online about how to regulate our nervous systems that are strategies for activating the vagus nerve. And so the vagus nerve is the 10th craniosacral nerve. One axis of it goes to the heart, and one to the lungs, and one to the gut. And it essentially, when we trigger and activate that nerve, it sends a signal to the entire nervous system that says, I'm safe. So it overrides anything else that's happening. And so we can do that with cold water on the face. We can do that with resonant breathing or box breathing. There's certain stretches. There's rocking. I mean, moms are like the original regulators of nervous system.
For the vagus nerve specifically.
Yes. So rocking for a period of time. And again, no distraction, giving ourselves a little bit of space to experience our own body and come back to the body. Tapping, just tapping, taking some time, closing the eyes and tapping. And just noticing where I am. Okay, here, I'm here. My body's here. I'm safe right now. Makes a world of difference. And best ones, singing and dancing. Humming, singing, dancing also activate the vagus nerve.
I'm glad we wound up here. I think the takeaways are clear, and but we morning light, movement, and tapping, rocking, singing, and
Humming, yeah.
humming. Yeah, music and sound is pretty powerful, right?
Yes,
And it's something that's important to you as well.
absolutely.
And it's part of your personal practice for
Yes.
wellness. Can you talk a little bit about music, please?
Yes, I was never a musical person until I went to ayahuasca. The first dieta I did in the jungle, the shaman asked us before we went into silence, how many musicians here? And there were 20 of us, and 12 people raised their hand. And then he said, it's okay, the rest of you will be musicians before you leave. And I thought that was funny, but it ended up being true. Because by the end of it, I wanted an instrument. I picked up an instrument, and I just started to teach myself how to play. And luckily, I had a dear friend of mine with me that's a multi-instrumentalist and world-renowned composer. So he taught me a few things while we traveled across South America together with a little charango in my hand. So that's how it all started. But since then, I noticed the medicine itself teaching how to use the vocal cords. Without the medicine, I'm an alto. With the medicine, I'm a soprano. So the opportunities of what's possible, in our vocal range and in our musical expression is, and a lot of times people feel that, I need to know more and I need to be an expert. No, you don't. You just need a willingness to be imperfect and try. And so for me, music is medicine. Now, all these years, 15, 16 years later, I play many instruments. I sing. Hopefully going to record an album this year that's traditional Iranian style singing and bringing those elements and weaving them. It's already incorporated in my practice. So bringing poetry of Rumi and Sufi teachers and combining them with Quechua, ancient Icaros and songs, and the mashup of these ancient, beautiful traditions and cultures in musical form. It's incredible. And even just drumming. My partner is not at all a musical person. But lately I got him a djembe and he's having a ball. And for him, it's a process of regulating the nervous system. Yeah, it's wonderful. So I really strongly recommend everyone pick up one thing. Just try to sing. Let go of any story that says you can't sing. My mom used to tell me, don't sing. It's terrible. Your voice is terrible. But it came out. It came out. After I just kept trying it, it came out. Now I have a voice to sing. So everyone can sing. Everyone can play an instrument. When in doubt, pick up a drum and just play with it.
Even if it's not music, even if it's not something that we recognize as being a song or something you would put on to listen to on purpose, the wave, the vibration, like participating in that. I have an opportunity to curate some community experiences at a spot here in town, and I'm thinking about trying to introduce. I'm not at all a professional chanting meditator, but I think it's a neat thing to incorporate into meditation, especially in groups with other people. Just the simple Om, and when you get that resonance, that group resonance, there really aren't a lot of other experiences in our day-to-day life where we get that. So that's a pretty special. I think that's a pretty special aspect of a container.
Absolutely, especially the ancient chants. So group singing, community singing is deeply healing. It's an incredible experience to resonance. So we all bring a tuning of our own nervous system, of our own vocal cords, and then we come into coherence with a group. And there's something really beautiful in that process that's collaborative, that's creative, that's communal. And it also gives us a sense of confidence. I'm not just being heard by myself. Some people have a little bit of apprehension.
Yeah.
But you also mentioned chants, which are so profoundly powerful. It's part of my practice as the kriyas, those ancient chants. And when I really sit in meditation and chant those ancient kriyas, what I'm imagining is thousands of years of all the people and all the monks that have been chanting these chants just behind me.
What's the term you used, kriya?
And so when I'm just imagining the resonance of thousands of years of the same vowels and the same sounds that have been leaving the lips of humanity, and it brings you into a sense of tuning and resonance. So I always look at everything from that perspective of music, whether it's resonance and tuning and harmony, that I am an instrument. My nervous system is an instrument. Now there's actually technology that analyzes your voice and then gives you a score on your nervous system. It's called a resonance score.
Wow.
Yeah. And that you can record your voice and it will tell you what state your nervous system is in, because your voice itself is an indicator of your nervous system.
Yeah.
And so when we work with the voice and sing, we're actually tuning the nervous system too. So there's something really beautiful with expression, and your voice is the greatest instrument. Even if you don't play any instrument, your voice is an instrument.
Before our conversation today, you had mentioned something about the possibility of working on a book.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yes. I've started that process. It's called Dating for Your Nervous System. And initially, I was going to write a book for couples. But as I've been doing more and more work with couples, what become really clear is that a lot of the challenges that couples face is foundational, and those foundations are laid early on in the choices that we make and how we show up and the what we communicate, with our partner. So what is that baseline that we set up for our relationship? And everything is built over that. So that felt really important as the primary, initial book to be written. But two, because singles are so underserved, and the dating world is brutal right now. And there's no compass to navigate the space. I have single clients that, came to me working with me on individual level and then getting ready for a partnership. And so I started offering them the singles process. And it's been just incredible. I mean, I was in that space for 10 years, so I'm intimately aware of the challenges, but it seems like they just keep getting more and more challenging to meet people, to even get on a date. I mean, that's like the hardest part a lot of times, is to just even get on a date, let alone all the work that comes afterwards. And so there's so much focus on getting the date that people, by the time they get to it, they're not paying attention to the process of the initial phases of the relationship as much. So this work is really about how do we identify what my nervous system needs to feel safe, because your partner will always trigger you. It's just designed that way. And so much of our trauma is connection trauma. Connection trauma is triggered in connection, but it's also healed in connection. So understanding what are the foundational needs of my nervous system to be ready for connection, to feel safe in connection, and what kind of person will have to show up for that. What is the characteristics? What are the qualities of this person? And am I actually paying attention to the cues of my body and my nervous system when I'm in their presence? And how do we both? I mean, if we are a good aligned set, coupled together, then how do we do the inner work to make sure that our relationship is set on a solid and harmonious foundation? So Dating for Your Nervous System is the book that has specific processes for doing that. It's a step-by-step process of mapping my nervous system and understanding what my needs are and differentiating between needs and desires. That's a big challenge. So often people are actually making decisions based on desires and not needs. So having that frame is really important. Understanding what triggers me, what supports me, having strategies, but then also having the language. So some of this work is about having the language of communicating my needs, asking, not holding back from asking. So often people hold back from asking, and I'm just going to assume that my partner should know or does know. And then later, when they don't, I don't speak it. I don't ask for it. It becomes resentment. By the time it comes out, it's not very kind and it's not very effective. So part of this work is the language, but the foundation of it is a deep sense of self-knowledge. And that's a gift that you offer to yourself, but you also offer to your partner. And just imagine having someone in front of you that knows your needs, knows your triggers, is forgiving of your shortfalls, which are inevitable when it comes to our nervous systems. We are going to get triggered. We are going to react in ways that we're not proud of. The closer we get to someone, the more we are seen, the more vulnerable we have to be. So having the structure prevents the surprises in the future and helps you have the tools to deepen connection in a meaningful way.
I love it. We talk about attachment styles. We talk about Enneagram, but really this seems like a very thoughtful and compassionate, again, tool to have to date, to broker relationships in a more skillful and conscientious way.
Yes, so the work is polyvagal informed. So I'm trained in polyvagal theory, which is the modern understanding of our nervous system, and everything I do goes through that filter. So the process I've developed for couples and singles is the same process. It's called the sound method. And the same work that I do with individuals is very much based on polyvagal theory and the application of that in our personal life, in our professional life, in our relationships. It's a beautiful process.
Well, I'm excited to see the book.
Thank you.
What is bending your mind right now in the world? It could be whatever comes to mind when you think of something that's bending your mind. What might that be?
Gosh, bending my mind. And I think just noticing the rapid changes, in the societies right now. And that I like to zoom out. If I go too detailed, it's too much right now. But if I try to zoom out and look at the bigger picture, it's really powerful to notice the spirit, humanity's spirit and desire for liberation, for love, for peace. And that is something that it permeates across all cultures. And right now, I'm from Iran, and there's all this chaos happening in my country. And at the root of it, beyond all the politics, is this deep human desire for liberation, for freedom, for expression, for sense of community and belonging, and being able to guide the outcome of your life, that you feel a sense of agency to do that. And what's fascinating is just noticing that all the structures that we've built over time to help sustain us or make sense of our society seem to be breaking down because they're hindering that expression, hindering that possibility in people. So although there's a lot of darkness across the board in the world right now, there's also that never-ending flame inside every human's heart that is one of liberation and connection and love and unity that is also rising in beautiful ways. And throughout this entire process, on the one hand, people getting angry and rage, that's an expression too, and it's valid too. But recently I was looking at this beautiful video of all these beautiful humans that have gathered, I don't remember where, somewhere in the East Coast, in front of a hotel where all the ICE agents were staying, and they were singing for them. And they were praying for them, and they were calling them to love. And so, we focus so much on the darkness, and our nervous systems are designed to look for danger, so that can very easily become our entire reality. But what's incredible is also seeing people rising and not just reacting, but inviting. So there's a beautiful invitation that's happening that's not just war and polarity, that is uniting people in faith and prayer, and not necessarily in dogmatic religion, but in faith in a greater, possibility for future, for fairness, for equality, for peace, for justice, and doing it with intention in an inviting way and not judging way. And so I'm starting to see those threads, permeate in cultures, because it seems like we've been so polarized and disconnected across the world over the last decade. But now I'm starting to see this beauty rise. And so finding this beauty, even in the darkness, is what's giving me a whole lot of hope, and seeing the human spirit shine, not from the danger and the fear-based reaction, but the hope and holding this vision. And that's really, really beautiful. And it's hard to argue with.
If someone wants to learn more about the work you're doing, what are the resources they should turn to?
So I have my website, AnahitaAnais.com. That's my concierge practice website. anyone interested in working with me, whether long-term nervous system work or individual psychedelic journeys or swing sessions, they can reach out to me and request an invitation. I have a limited capacity, so I have an invitation process. I'm also in the process of launching a new project that is not out yet, but I'm really excited to get it out within the next couple months. It's called Regulate to Relate. And Regulate to Relate is an educational platform for learning how to improve the quality of our connections through the lens of the nervous system.
Is that co-regulation?
It's co-regulation, yes, and some self-regulation, because we need to have that ability too, especially in context of a relationship, that we need to have some of our personal tools and not always rely on a partner to support us, but having both of them, although co-regulation is primary.
Yeah. I think in summary, we touched today on there's a lot that a person can do for central nervous system health and regulation. And it doesn't have to be psychedelic. Psychedelic integration can be a catalyst for an opportunity and a specific aspect of the work. But even outside of that, the body, mind, spirit connection, there's just so much that can be done. And you are continuing to innovate and create modalities that are expansive and inviting. And I'm very grateful that you came on and got reconnected with me and shared what you've shared with us today. So thank you so much for being a guest on the Mindbend podcast.
Thank you so much for having me here, Matthew. And thank you to everyone that's listening.